amazing. The rest of the pattern, Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today, I'm very excited. I have the only Halloween costume I am doing for the 6 weeks of spooky sewing series that I'm doing. So today I'm going to be doing a scandalous Winifred Sanderson costume. So I know no one is asking for a sexy Winifred Sanderson costume, but I had the idea pop into my head. I couldn't shake it, and so here we are now. No one's asking for it, but it also, like, to me really harkens back to the time where it felt like every Halloween costume was supposed to be kind of scandalous. I feel like maybe we're still in that era, but I feel like now people, like, Halloween just isn't for being sexy. Like, I think there's now kind of more of a combo, or maybe it's because I'm older and I know more weird crafty people. I don't know, but I don't think it's necessary to make her sexy. I just think it's kind of a hilarious concept, and so it's definitely done, like, in humor. So this is the pattern I'm using. This is a pattern from 2008. So 2008, I was pretty young and I desperately wanted to wear a Halloween costume like the one in this pattern, but my mom told me no because I was too young. She was correct. I think it's smart to not let your children go around dressed like this, even though it's not your children's fault that adults suck. So anyway, I'm going to be doing the witch costume in this pack. We're gonna kind of see how this whole process goes. This is the most modern pattern I've ever used, I think. And it's also, like, definitely not within my normal style. So it's just going to be really, really interesting to work on. With that, this is going to take a lot of different fabrics to make. There's like 4 fabric on the back listed, like so much fabric, different types. So let's hop into what my fabric choices are. First is this sparkly tulle. I have this sparkly tulle. I picked all of these up from fabric.com. I would get a kickback if you were to use those links. However, these are the fabrics that I am genuinely using, and I'll give you my thoughts on them at the end of this video. I've already sewn with this one because I needed ruffles and I wanted the fabric to match exactly, as opposed to using like chunky lace. So I've already made 6 yards of this trim out of this fabric. It's as easy to sew as your normal tulle. I will say there is glitter everywhere and I'm gonna have to really deep clean my machine after. So keep that in mind if you're going with a sparkly tulle. The next fabric is the lining for the main body part of the costume, I guess, and it is just this taffeta, or it might be nylon, I'll double check. But it has a nice sheen. I think it's pretty. I think it'll work perfectly for what I need it for. And then this velvet. I'm not sure how I feel about this velvet. I'm gonna have to see how I feel about it after I sew with it. The pile is just really short and I maybe wanted something a little bit more luxe than this velvet. I would say this velvet doesn't feel super luxe, but I believe I was looking for a cotton velvet, which I don't know why, but I was. I'll give you my full thoughts on this fabric after I'm done sewing with it. And then last is this fabric. I thrifted this fabric for $2 a yard a long time ago, and it's just been sitting around in my stash. It wants you to basically completely line the fabric, the velvet. And then the last thing is this trim. I know this is it's not 100% accurate. So because it is a take on Winifred's costume, it is not supposed to be 100% accurate. And I didn't want to like take the time to like paint all the symbols that go along her cloak. Instead, I kind of thought I would shortcut it and do these kind of cute little stars and moons trim. And then the velvet thing that I make, which is just like the corset top part of this, I'm hoping to wear in real life and not just for a costume. So the plan will be to use this. I also still need to go pick up some gold ribbon. I don't think I have any, and I'm looking for that for the ties for the corset. But yeah, this is probably like the most ply intensive project I've done, not in like the number of yards, but in the like quantity of types of fabric. I think that'll be really interesting and we'll see how I feel about it. I mean, in general, like I said, this is the most modern pattern I've ever sewn. So we'll see how I feel about it. I am pretty excited, but I am a little nervous because I don't know the sizing as well for these. This will just be a really interesting ride. Come and join it with me. I'm really excited. Once I got this idea in my head, I couldn't get it out. And so here we are making a sexy Winifred Sanderson costume. Let's go ahead and hop into the cutting. So before I even start this project, I need to make some trim. I want the trim to perfectly match. So I am cutting it out of the tulle. I am cutting a bunch of 4-inch strips and then a couple 2-inch strips. The 4-inch strips I'll fold in half and gather, and then the 2-inch strips will be my binding. I'm not going super in depth on how to do these, but here you can see I am folding the tulle in half and putting basting stitches in, and then I will gather these in to the bias tape I made and then bias bind them, and then this is what I'll use for my trim. I made about 6 yards of this, which is perfect and exactly the amount that I needed for this garment, but this did add an additional, I think, 3 hours to the making time of this dress. Taffeta is Spooky's favorite fabric. She loves how it rustles. She loves how silky it is, so I thought I would give you a treat of her playing with it before I started cutting the fabric, even though her playing in the fabric was not a treat for me as I wanted to cut the fabric. But I did finally get around to cutting this fabric around Spooky's playing. Man, she is so cute, but she is so rascally. This was pretty straightforward. A lot of stuff cut on the bias for this because there's no closures on this dress, and kind of a lot of weird shaped pieces. I did end up using this full yardage, even though it kind of feels like I shouldn't have had to, but just the way these laid, they took up a lot of space. Spooky also loves herself some tulle, but here I am cutting out all the pieces again on tulle. I'm cutting out more pieces here because the sleeve pieces had you only cutting on tulle and they did not have you cutting them out in the satin lining. So one of the other reasons I used all that fabric is after cutting out the lining is like shorter than the actual piece, and there's nowhere where it dresses that in the instructions, so I kind of didn't know what to do with this, because the way the instructions were telling me to do this, I would end up with unfinished edges showing, so I recut it and have the lining fully covering everything. I am very happy with how this turned out and would do this in the future. And then here I am pinning the side panels and then the front. The front is interesting because it's like two pretty intense curves. And I think this is just the way it works because then it'll ease into the top line of the dress part. But this was also kind of a little bit weird to work with. It was just, I've not seen a pattern like this, which this is the most modern pattern I've ever made, so I guess it isn't surprising. I do want to note I have basted the tulle to the satin, but now that I've done that, I am working on the final construction for this dress. So here, what we are doing is we are making the channels the elastic will run through on the top of the bust as well as the top of the back. And I'm making that elastic channel by first folding it over about 1/4 inch and then folding over a big amount for the elastic to actually run through that channel. And then here the pattern actually has elastic guides, which I've actually not seen before, so this was kind of fun for me. So I'm just cutting the elastic according to the guides. Then I am obviously cutting that, and then I am going to be threading that through the proper channels. This was, just fun because most older patterns that use elastic tell you how long, based on either your measurements or the garment's measurements, you make the elastic. So it was kind of fun to not have to measure it myself and to just get to kind of be brainless and snip away. And then here it tells you to secure the elastic at the ends, which is what I'm doing here with just stitching forward and back a couple of times. And then here I am working on the sleeves, which do not have the lining. It's pretty hard to see what's going on here because it's so see-through. But basically what I'm doing first is I'm doing that elastic channel. In retrospect, I should have lined this part and left just the end parts like free-flowing, but I didn't know that back when I was making this. And then I also didn't double fold this one because it's tulle and it just kind of felt kind of pointless since it would poke through anyway. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's how I felt, so that's what I did. The next step here, again, it's really hard to see what's happening because of the fabric being sheer, but I am easing the sleeve into the piece of fabric that kind of makes up that dangly bit of the rest of the arm. And then here I am feeding the elastic through. The reason I think I should have lined this is I don't think I like being able to see the elastic. I thought I'd be okay with it because it's black, but black really doesn't blend into purple tulle. And then the other thing I'm doing here is I am pinning in the sleeve to sew it. These are just interesting because they only connect in the armpit region because the elastic is that top cap part of the sleeve. That was just definitely a different type of sleeve for me. And then here I am just sewing up the sides of the skirt on both of the lining and the tulle part. And then once that is done, I am just sewing on the 4 rows of ruffles to the bottom of the skirt before I assemble the whole thing. So the way I'm doing this is, if you can see that big masking tape I have here, I know that the top of each ruffle should hit that and then I will be sewing the ruffle on top of that down. And then for this dress, the last step is just to pin the tulle layer to the lining layer of the skirt, and then go ahead and baste that shut because that will be top stitched down over the bodice, which I am gathering here. And then that wraps up my sewing for the night, which is always very exciting. Good morning. As you can see with the flowers and the fruit, I've been to the farmer's market. It is noon. I needed to do a bunch of stuff around the house. I had to clean the litter box, clean the kitchen, just lots of stuff to do. So that's what I was up to this morning. I'm gonna eat some lunch and then I'm gonna get started sewing, but I wanted to check in before I began the journey into figuring out lunch. We do have a garment here. That is something. I have tried it on. It is one of the most unflattering things I've put on my body that I've ever made. I would kind of expect nothing less from a 2008 sexy Halloween costume pattern. It's like way too poofy in the back, but if I was to bring it in the back, I wouldn't be able to get it over my head because there's no closures on this dress. I think ultimately to make a dress like this that fits well, you would need to put enclosures. This is like not the piece that I'm going to be reusing over and over again. I'm really focused on the outer peplum for something that I'm going to be adding into my everyday wardrobe. So I feel okay about it, and I think it will be okay because it'll have the peplum over to shape it. But I will say I don't super love it. The sleeves aren't cute either, and I thought the sleeves were gonna be really cute, so I'm a little bit bummed about that. But you'll have to see it in the reveal, and maybe by then I'll have enough space from it to like it a bit better, because that sometimes happens where you're making something and you don't love it, and then you get some space from it for a few days and you're good. I did have to clean out so much glitter from my sewing machine. Holy moly. I don't think I would work with this glitter tool again purely from the shed factor, or if I did, I would work with it right before I know my machine's due for service. So today we're focused on the peplum and the collar, which I think are going to be the things that make this dress look good. So I'm pretty excited to dive into that. I've read the instructions. Some of the instructions I think I don't agree with. I need to basically cut it out and sew everything. So I wouldn't say a long day ahead of me, but I have a good amount of stuff to do, and the trim that I'll be putting on it, I will be hand sewing down. So that'll be the bulk of my time. I suspect this peplum piece will take longer. I'm also learning how to set grommets, which I haven't done before. I think today will be fun because I think I'll learn a bunch of new things, and I think it will really make this dress look a gajillion times better. So I'm gonna go eat lunch, and then we're gonna go ahead and hop into sewing this. I know I'm making a scandalous costume, but it just throughout this process really shocked me how tiny all these pieces were, because obviously I'm used to below the knee skirt size patterns. But this is all the pieces for the little corset thing, and so I am just pinning those and cutting those out of first the velvet, and then I will repeat that in the cotton that's going to be the lining. So I am pinning all the pieces of like the corset, top of the corset together. There are I think 6 pieces, and I'm doing that to both the lining and then the velvet as well. And then here I am just go ahead and sewing all of those seams. I like working with a sturdy fabric, especially after a tulle, so this was really nice for me. During that process, I was also sewing up all the side seams of the little like skirt peplum piece. So what they have you do with this is actually sew these together first, which I just thought was an interesting order of operation. Definitely not what I'm used to, but I followed the instructions. And then after that, I cut the seams nice and short, and then I'm just clipping all of my curves. I almost called them corners, but I remembered it's one big circle and very round without corners. The math of it all. And then now I'm using one of my turner tools to get all of the edges nice and round, and I am pressing on the cotton side so I don't cause any iron marks on the velvet side. So while usually if I did this, I would be pressing both sides, I am only pressing one. And then this is where the pattern order got really interesting. So it first has me sew on the velvet of the corset side. And then once I've sewn the outside on, I'm pinning the lining to the corset outside. I hope I'm showing you what I mean by this. And they're basically having me stuff the skirt in there like a sausage, and sew all the way around the edges, leaving a gap in the middle of the corset lining. This was just a really interesting way to do things because it was clearly to minimize hand sewing since it's from a more modern pattern where they don't expect you to hand sew, but this felt really, really wild and weird to me. I felt like I was sewing a pillow. It was a feeling. It was a vibe. And then here I have sewn that burrito, I guess is what I'm going to call it. Not accurate, but it's what I'm going to call it. Maybe a hot pocket. I'm sewing this hot pocket. And then I have, again, clipped the seam lines down, and I'm clipping all of my curves and corners. And then I will be turning this all out from that little hole I left. This worked beautifully, but it was a super bizarre experience. So this was my first time ever setting grommets, so I was a little bit nervous. So first I'm using an awl, and I am poking a hole, and then I am going and having to cut with scissors to be able to get the grommet itself through. What I am doing here is then I am putting, it's like the pokey side of the grommet through the fabric, and then after that is put through the fabric, I then put on, it kind of looks like a little washer up on the top. And then after that, they are very, very keen on this. You put your tools all together and you hammer them with a mallet, a rubber mallet. They're very clear that you're not supposed to be using a metal hammer. I assume a metal hammer would just damage the tools more. This took more force than expected, but they did turn out really lovely, and I will definitely use grommets again. I don't think they're like the cutest things ever, but they're definitely functional and they definitely work. And then the next step is putting on the trim. So again, I know the star trim is not accurate. I am not going for peak accuracy. I'm going for camp. So with that, I am just sewing on this gold trim around just the peplum part. I was going to do it around the whole corset thingy, but I forgot how tiny clothes like this are, so I didn't realize how much the trim would overwhelm it. I actually would have gotten different trim if I realized that, but it's too late for that. So I'm just top stitching down along the like small skinny side of the trim around the edge, and then I will go back through and hand sew the like floppy parts of the trim down, the stars and the moons. And then I almost forgot the collar. This is me making the collar. It was really easy. I just sewed the two pieces together around the edges, leaving a hole in the middle to turn it inside out with, which I eventually hand stitched down. And then there are a piece of ribbon on each side for me to tie it with. So nothing crazy. And the pattern doesn't actually have you do it with the ribbon in it. They actually have you do a trim around the outside, but I didn't want to have to do another trim. I didn't really want trim on this, and tying a bow with trim is way harder than with ribbon. So I ignored all of those instructions. Here I am just hand sewing this down. I started filming when I had 3 left, just because I kind of had figured out my mode at this point. So what I'm doing is I am just sewing around each moon and star. I'm going 5 points on the little stars, 5 points in the midpoints on the big stars, and then just around the moon as I felt like, to get everything anchored down using really small stitches. If you look on the underside, you can see a lot of big stitches. This is like not the cleanest job I could have ever done, but I kind of just wanted to get it done, and I don't think that will be a problem that you can see the stitches on the underside. So that was kind of my method to this madness, but this is it for sewing, so we're gonna hop into hair and makeup. So I'm about to do my hair and makeup. I thought I would show you what I'm doing since I'm not experienced, and so I don't like overcomplicate things. So first I'm just brushing through my hair, trying to get it really, really smooth for the wig cap. I had quite a few mats in there, hence why it's taking so long. And then I'm smoothing it into a mid ponytail, and then I'm trying to like put it into a flat bun. I had not read wig cap at this point, so I didn't realize that this was maybe not gonna work, but I got that all put in there, and then I'm getting out my wig cap. This was a very small wig cap. I got it all caught up in my earrings. It really hurt. Take your earrings out that you can. I have a few that I can't, and so you can see me just like really struggling. I think it's important to show when you're not good at things. Here I am having to cut it out. You can't quite see it, but I'm literally having to cut it out of my earrings. Things happen, and here we are for part 2 and attempt 2. This still didn't really work, and this wig cap was so tight. I felt like it was like cutting off my circulation, which is like a good thing. You want a tight wig cap, but this was very difficult. And then I am yet again putting up the pins and stuff. I'm trying to shove all my little like sideburn hairs in there, and it's not working so great. But I think I've called this good enough for now because I'm exhausted, and then I'm just looking through all my eyeshadow palette. I'm just putting in this like kind of neutral brown shade into my whole eyeball. Wow, not my whole eyeball. And then here I am, I'm going in with a black matte powder. Winifred just has like really dark eyeshadow, so I'm just trying to mimic that. So I'm just patting that matte all over my eyelid, and I'm just going over and over again with that black eyeshadow, just trying to build it up. And then I'm just patting on some sparkly black glittery eyeshadow onto my lids. Everything's looking, I think, pretty blended and good for me. I'm trying to stick some eyeliner in the waterline. That didn't work. And then I'm curling my lashes. And then I'll be putting on mascara and all that things. I can't do it with my mouth closed. And then here I'm trying to figure out my game plan. I'm literally putting concealer on my lips and I start kind of making some faces because it's looking terrible. And I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing and the coloring isn't looking correct, but it's just because it's in this room under these lighting conditions. It gets better. I chose to trust the process instead of cleaning everything off. So now I'm just like searching everywhere for my red lipstick that I had set out because I knew I was doing this, and then I settled and I used a different one. Here I'm just kind of like trying to carve out that like Queen Elizabeth lip vibe that's happening. And I'm trying to make the Cupid's bow higher. I don't really have a ton of Cupid's bow things happening. And looking at this, they're definitely uneven, but everything was good enough for the camera. And then she has really heavy blush on, just like kind of below the apples of her cheeks. It's a weird look, so I'm just building that up. I should have used something pinker, but I realized that too late. And then I am now just grabbing the wig, trying to get it all figured out. This wig was fine, the quality was fine, but it definitely like was kind of uplifting on the edges, and I kind of had my wig cap slip. I couldn't get like my sideburn area again into the wig cap as well as I wanted to. So I redid the wig cap for like the gajillionth time, and this time I kind of like flatly did my hair like a mohawk. Like I said, this is not really my forte, so I'm just doing the best that I can. And then I'm popping that wig back on. So I'm first just trying to get all my blue hair up into the wig in the back. I can't really see what's happening back there, and I won't till the reveal, so bear with me there. This was really challenging because this was red hair, and then my, not natural hair, but like my hair is blue, and so they really clashed, and I had to do a lot to really cover it. So I'm trying to pin it down to cover. This is not hitting on my forehead where it really should, but I wanted it a little bit forward rather than have bits of my blue hair go through. That was a spooky appearance guest star. I think we're pretty close to ready. So now we'll go ahead and hop into the reveal. Alright, you've seen the reveal. I actually have a lot of mixed feelings about this project, but before we hop into those, let's first talk about the cost breakdown of this. So for the fabric, all the fabric I got, and I had some left over, was $69.20. I think that's a great price on fabric. However, most of these were synthetic, which is not usually what I work with. All things considered, when I saw the fabric price of this, I was pretty excited. However, notions are kind of another story. So the Stars and Moon trim, I bought way too much of, so I could have definitely reduced my cost here. And then this also includes the thread, the elastic, the grommets, stuff like that. That came to a total of $48.78. Notions can really add up very fast since this is only about $20 cheaper than the fabric. And then last was the pattern. This was not a super high in demand pattern, so I was able to get it for $10. So pretty straightforward. That made sense to me because yeah, 2008 is not like prime pattern time. So you're not fighting all the vintage folks the way you are on those 40s and 50s patterns. So that brings us to supply total of $127.98. Honestly, for the quality of the fabric I had, this felt a little bit high. I could have also definitely reduced my costs by, I like to usually buy a half yard to a yard of wiggle room so I can be impulsive, sporadic. I don't know what you want to call it. So yeah, I don't know. This feels kind of like you could invest that into a pretty nice store-bought Halloween costume. So I don't know. Like I said, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this project. As far as the labor hours, this was a really long project because of all the different pieces. This project took me 15 hours and 30 minutes, which just kind of feels like a lot for what I got out of it. Again, I multiply this number by $25, which is the seamstress wage in Seattle that I found, to get a labor total of $387.50. So that brings this in total to $515.48. Take what you will from that. I feel like that's a very steep cost for something like this. However, this does probably show the factory conditions that people are working under who are making these Halloween costumes. They are a lot of different pieces and a lot of moving parts in most cases. And so the fact that we're able to find them for like $50 is concerning. Definitely think about what seamstress is making that and what type of wage they're earning. That's like the biggest pro to me to making this at home, is just from an ethical standpoint. Halloween costumes are kind of like some of the lowest ethically because they get thrown out fast, they're cheaply made, and they are probably on like rushed production lines. Anyway, enough with the cost. Let's talk about the project itself. So, like I said, I feel very mixed about this one. Let's work our way through the pieces. So, first is this dress. If I'm honest, I really do not like this dress. It's not particularly comfortable to wear. It doesn't look particularly nice. The only thing that saved this is the thing that goes over it and cinches the waist. I do think there's a chance that I maybe needed to go down a size on the dress, which the corset-y thing fit me, so that's just always interesting. I will say, I think if I was to do this again, I would actually line these guys here, the upper parts, and just leave this. I also don't think, even though it says it as a suggested material, this is really that well suited for tulle. I think I would have much rather gone with a mesh netting in the future, like something that just flows and has a little bit more drape to it. The only thing I do love about this is this little ruffly skirt. Actually, part of me is debating whether I want to just take this, chop the top off of it and put a waistband on it and use it as a skirt. There's a good chance I'll do that. However, I also really like the idea of having this costume to just whip out in my storage because I did really like the costume overall. This was really out of my comfort zone anyway. Like, I knew this was a dress that was out of my comfort zone because I dress much more modestly, like I said at the beginning of this video. Again, no shade or anything towards people who dress less modestly. I think it's great personally. For me, I feel more comfortable in more modest clothes that I'm not worried about anything falling out of. Kind of my feelings on the dress. I also really screwed up one of the arms and I had to sew it on inside out. Yeah, I don't know, not my best work. There was like no good way to finish the seams on this. I don't know if they're just like counting on you serging. I don't know, not a huge fan, like I said, but I might just cut it down and use it as a skirt. We will see. The second piece would be the collar. So this is cute in theory. However, it didn't say straight. I had to like put it on back straightened like every 3 seconds. Like, I will have to tape this to my neck to wear it for a Halloween costume. This is why I think I could go down a size on this, is it would allow me to get it tighter around my neck. It didn't have you tie it on with ribbons on the pattern. That was an alteration I did, and I think it could have worked if this was smaller. So let's talk about the true star of this show, which is this corset cover thing here. I'm going to use this a bunch. I'm gonna wear it a bunch. I really, really, really like this. I like the way it like brings in my waist. I think it would look great over other pieces I own, like with just a plain white blouse and maybe like a black skirt or a brown skirt or something like that. Like, I think this would also look good over some of like the more basic dresses I have. I think there's a lot of uses for this, and I really, 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 really liked this as far as like pieces go. So definitely would recommend this pattern solely for this piece here. I thought it was just a really, really, really cute detail. So all things considered, I do really like this costume. I'm excited to have it to pull out of my closet whenever I feel like being Winifred Sanderson, the scandalous version. And this was a really fun experiment of getting to, I guess, wear what I desperately wanted to in my teens. I think, like, wearing it now as an adult, I think I just want to fit in my teens. There's nothing that fantastic about a costume like this. Honestly, Halloween costumes aren't that well fitting most of the time. I was about to say, granted, if I had one that fit better, I might have felt more confident in it. But I don't think that's necessarily true, because I think Halloween costumes are a lot of times ill-fitting when you get them at the stores where I would find something like these. So yeah, no, I don't know. This was just a funny project because it mixed two parts of my childhood, Hocus Pocus and wanting to dress in scandalous costumes in my teens. And so I hope you really enjoyed it. Again, a quick summary, the corset piece, amazing. The rest of the pattern, that's how I'd sum that up. For $10 though, pattern was definitely worth it. I will say overall, the cost and labor that went into this, I'm not sure feels 100% worth it. And I didn't even throw in the cost of like my makeup, which I all have already in my collection. I'll link it down below. Remember, these are affiliate links from Amazon, so I do get a kickback if you purchase anything from them, but I'll link the wig down below. It was fine. It was a really, really, really cheap cost, and the quality about matched that. However, I read tons of reviews before I chose the wig I chose, and this one did not have like being too short back here on it. I haven't really necessarily looked at the back, but I think that's true for this one. I didn't feel like it was too small. A lot of the other Winifred Sanderson wigs show being too small. So at least for my head, it was the right size. So I will link that down below. You can check it out. Like I said, meh quality, but like good enough. I think I'm going to kind of start to get more into wigs, so I guess stay tuned, be aware of that, I don't know. I am going to put the sparkly tools sheds. I'm going to be finding purple glitter all over my apartment probably until the day I move out of here. It's deep in my sewing machine. I'm sure I'm going to get a lecture next time I take my sewing machine in for service. They're going to be like, what were you doing? So I'm going to, put that tight in a plastic bag and put it in my closet so it doesn't get glitter all over everything else in there. Quick fabric reviews, because I'll link those down below. Those may or may not be affiliate links. We'll see. I really, really, really liked the velvet. It is a really, really short pile. However, I think it works for a piece like this that might just have more wear. It's like definitely not a luxury velvet, but it's a velvet that I feel like has some grit to it. The glitter tulle is glitter tulle. I love glitter. I love tulle. It does shed, as noted. And the taffeta is, I guess, what I would expect taffeta to be. I don't know. I'll link all of those down below. I'll link where I found the trim as well, the Moon and the Stars trim. I did order that, I think, over from China, so it did take a while to arrive. It probably won't arrive for your Halloween if you're trying to buy it for Halloween this year. I think this was a good experiment. I will say this did not sell me on modern patterns, but I don't think judging a Halloween costume for that is completely fair, so one day I'll try another modern pattern and I'll withhold my judgment until then. This is only week 2 of 6 weeks of spooky sewing, so definitely stay tuned. I have 4 more weeks of Halloween and fall goodness coming your way in sewing projects, so definitely subscribe, stick around. I would love to have you, and then as always, you can help me out by commenting, liking, and then I also have the option to buy me a coffee if you so desire, so feel free to do that. And with that, let's go ahead and end this, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!